Okay, you might call the next argument I'm trying to make the problem of Rand versus Hitchens versus Dawkins. Okay. And here is what I'm learning about human symbols. And remember, this is all just basically the same grand experiment, folks. First of all, I had to stake my life on the outcome of the experiment. There are reasons for that. If you go back on my channel into my material, you'll see what I mean by that. But this has implications beyond the fact that, like, orthodox, I hate the use of that term, but like Orthodox evangelical Christianity is my opening position. Okay? My obligation to the communication specialists at, say, the Empower Network, for example, is beginning to teach me that I need to know what I need to say before I'm ready to market it at a mass level. First, I was under the impression that, for example, the only way to become an expert on YouTube, or to get enough time compression about being an expert on YouTube, was to pay someone else to have it done. Okay. The reason that I'm finding it more attractive to be on YouTube as, part of the experiment, that's the general territory, is that, first of all, YouTube is basically the highest domain in the overall internet food chain at which I can expand the pieces of the experiment that I control right now. Okay? And basically, I started out with the notion that, well, first of all, I started out with the notion that basically I absolutely have to learn to use the internet in order to make money. Okay? I was forced into that by the actions of the United States territorial government. See my marriage is a welfare fraud for details. Now, whether you believe that was right or wrong, or whether you believe that action was taken by a human power or a divine power or whatever, I've stopped speculating about that part of the situation. Okay? But I started out with a resolution that says I have to learn how to make money on the internet. And I discovered something about the relationship that has existed in all of my life between this whole problem of, like, not having money in the first place, and why everybody in all the niches in the system is sitting here telling me, well, you don't have the capacity, you're undereducated, you need more education in order to get any money. Therefore, eventually I went through a period where, everything I could say on the internet was potentially illegal. That's where I really started to get scared. Okay, that's where I really started to get scared. So now I'm working out this model of let's do an experiment. What does it take to actually get the authority I need in my life to make the money? Okay. Well, see, this is one of the advantages to the Christian framework. If the secret to not being obsessed with money is that God is the highest love, because it specifically says in the scriptures, God is love. All right, never mind, which religion I happen to believe is right or wrong about whatever. I know that the scriptures state explicitly that God is love. End of discussion. I could go back and give you the verse for that one. But see, I won't, because if you're not really interested enough to read it from a place like Bible Gateway, then what would I be doing? I would be forcing a mind. Okay. So, there's this technique I like to use, and okay, I hope to get paid for the technique, but if you begin to see it in some of the ways that I am now experimenting with posting elsewhere, you begin to understand that it's a commonality. It's a style of speaking that I'm developing. Okay. It's a style of speaking that I'm developing. And I'm discovering that, first of all, money is not the only variable. Okay. That basically I have to make a covenant with God to pursue love. And the best part of the equation I've been able to come up with so far is that if you pursue money, okay, at the expense of love, the problem is if you pursue money at the expense of love, then eventually you get a result that's leading into a loveless death. Okay, you get into failure, but the thing, take the example of King Solomon. Okay, King Solomon in the scriptures, when he was very, very young, actually, made this prayerful covenant with God, where basically God, through one of the, whichever prophet it was, who came to Solomon, said, God says, I'll give you anything you want, just ask. And basically Solomon's response is classic here. He says, Lord God, give me the wisdom I need to rule my people. Okay, in love. And because you asked for wisdom from me, says God, okay, I'm not only going to give you wisdom such as men have never seen, and the reputation that Solomon had for his day was he was the wisest man who ever lived, literally. Okay. So, like I said, you don't need to be using a Judeo-Christian frame of reference to understand that. That's just the reputation of King Solomon. Everybody knows at a mass level that's what King Solomon was famous for. It's alleged. Okay. So, because that legend appears in the Bible, that's why I get, that's why I get excited as a Christian minister with using it. But the problem is, I'm not trying to force a mind, but basically anybody knows that if you follow after love first, then one of the results, if you don't get obsessed with something else to the point that you become unloving, is that you end up serving enough people by your attitude of loving, okay, by having thought out the sort of loving you wish to do. See, this is part of Ayn Rand's point. Okay, the problem with religious systems as she saw it in Atlas Shrugged was not so much that, as she appeared to argue, that like the altruistic impulse in man is wrong, is like morally incorrect. Okay. What is morally incorrect is the attempt to force a mind. Okay, the attempt to move without consent into forcing a mind to believe what it does not believe, whether you are using spiritual force or physical force. That was the argument in Atlas Shrugged. Okay. And basically, the highest standard she was able to get to, being an atheist, is, one of the variables in her little experiment that I disagree with is that, for example, by rewriting the historical constitution to be more supportive of trade, altering history in order to say that the correct impulse is not, God's, or not, Congress shall make no law respecting religion nor the free exercise thereof. She replaced that with Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of trade. Okay? And the thing is, intellectually, there's a tension there. Okay? If she actually believes that there is no such thing as a higher power, then part of the way she was using language in, I don't know if it was Atlas Shrugged or maybe it was the other book, part of the way she was using language was wrong, but in another of her books she talks about whatever power it is that observes the best within us. Okay, this was a I think a dying newspaper editor was talking about this. Okay, I'm not sure whether he was dying or whatever. I can't even remember the context exactly. But there's a problem with trying to build coherence into your symbols. When your symbols become emotionally coherent, you become more threatening to some people, not less. To whatever degree they are not being rational, okay, if your feeling structure becomes coherent to the point that they do not understand why they are feeling the feelings you have inspired in them, okay, that is a result that I call dark sorcery. Okay. Now, I'm trying to use, okay, if the whole game, if the whole Veritasia concept is how do we build the authority for success so that it works at, basically all levels of society. And what I'm finding out is it's not just that it's not just that the symbology is wrong necessarily, but for instance, you need to be able to decide whether you, for example, think that somebody is feeling or thinking when they are making their argument. And the problem with feeling or thinking, okay, is that when you make that separation, this gets back to a concept called the boundary problem, implications in physics, okay, no higher power equals total chaos, right? Okay, I'm not going to play with physics, that's not my discipline. But, you know, basically, if you want to drive a quantum mechanics person nuts, ask them about the boundary problem. Okay? So, like, the moment you begin to make separations and say X is good but Y is evil, you run into one kind of problem. The other kind of problem, and this is part of what Ayn Rand was helping me to address, the other kind of problem is that I believe what Ayn Rand was trying to say is that feeling plus thinking, okay, feelings that you have thought about, emotionally based intuitions that you have applied rational thought to, are perfectly all right, okay, and that they always tend to lead toward, always assuming I'm right, they tend to lead to a pro-survival, pro-thriving result. Okay? There is a problem under Clarke's law with eliminating God. Okay? Because even if you believe that that the source of, quote, the God delusion, unquote, is that human beings like to apply God as a symbol for, quote unquote, everything I don't understand. Okay, by God of the gaps theory, what if the problem is specifically a problem in logic? Okay, the implication of this is that the internet is really, really terrible at cross-disciplinary applications. Okay, we have the power to make cross-disciplinary applications, but, for example, building a team in order to get all the variables necessary, for, say, the creation of X positively motivated piece of technology, okay, it is extremely damn hard. Because here's the thing. The internet as a whole is the world's first fully applicable sociological modeling engine. God help us all. Okay. So there's a problem when you make laws for yourself, and there's an equally dangerous problem when you don't make laws for yourself. Okay? The conclusion that I'm coming to is, how do you avoid, making laws for the other guy or against the other guy in such a way that you're not forcing the cooperation of their mind against their emotionally driven will. Okay, and again, here is where I'm trying to stay away from God as a concept. Ignore the fact that I am a theologian by orientation. Did I just use the word theologian? Okay. I've been claiming non-expert status as a theologian. Okay. So, one of the scary implications is having chosen C.S. Lewis, who became a theologian in the objective, retrospective sense. Okay, not that he was a theological expert. There's a difference. His field of expertise was in teaching literature. Okay. Oh God. See, I'm running into scary implications all over the place. And for example, if I empower some group of people to be able to do something, to the extent that I empower them to do whatever it is to the entire planet, okay, which, I find myself like proposing systemic changes in Google, right? So like, for example, you can get better tracking on, say, the difference between logic and objectivity versus emotion. Okay, but again, that may be a false choice dipole. So far, what I know about human success is that if you can get a logic matched with an emotion, matched with a symbol, and you can get them all coherent to work together, okay, then you're probably proceeding ethically in the direction of some form of success. That's what I know. Okay, so I'm going to stop. That's at the limit of what I know. And yeah, I'm going to keep tinkering in the background. Sure, I'm making several posts a day now, because I'm literally trying to transmit information as briefly as possible, but as soon as I find it out. That's the tension. Okay. So the problem at this point is not any one particular thing. It's to avoid the forcing of other minds, okay, when they involve themselves with any one particular thing that I'm doing. I have a population of one citizen in the Veritasian Empire. Not saying he understands what I'm trying to do. We just, it was a matter of like a day or so ago that he actually grasped the potential for example, building my own MLM company. And I can't say I've got a company, because I don't, not in what I call the hard paper law sense. But I'm discovering that, in terms of economies of scale and effort, okay, there's this phenomenon called time compression, that one of the functions of the Empower Network is that they want to teach novice marketers how to avoid having time compression kick you in the butt. Okay. So anyway, I have to assume that like they may already have a YouTube course. If they don't have a YouTube course, that's the course I want to provide for Empower Network, which is, basically that's another divine bargain. If they don't have such a course, then I'm going to need to provide it myself. Only by the time I'm ready to do that, I can set my own terms for the testing of that course. You see how that goes? And basically, before I work on a proposition so outrageous that, for example, I'm proposing, deep structure changes in Google, changes in the way people argue all across the internet. Okay? See, I happen to believe, and this is one of the political solutions that implied itself real quickly. Okay? One of the models for like the elimination of religious conflict, and never mind how my Christian compatriots think that is actually going to contribute to the real human apocalypse, because I understand the Christian concerns about, well, if you unify all of the religious positions throughout the world, then aren't you, quote unquote, bringing in Antichrist? Okay, I understand that tension, folks. What I'm saying is, if we're intended to live for much longer on the earth, setting aside the idea that the apocalypse will come by, say, 2050 at the outside. See, I'm going to spend every day of my life fighting the actual emergence of an actual apocalypse based on the use of the internet. All right, that's how I'm going to try to change the internet. But, for example, just the other day I ran across somebody whose argument was that, well, we atheists are being politically tolerant, and I can prove it because we let you delusional Christians build universities based on the fact that you have to be a Christian in order to be admitted to yada yada university. Okay. Immediately my response is, okay, in the New World Order, let's presume just for the moment that I am acting as an agent of the devil, okay, and I want the New World Order to arise, okay, and see, it's not that I believe those conspiracy theories to be ridiculous either. I'm just trying to demonstrate the nature of the bias. And basically, politically, in the system as it exists today, if we're going to give the Christians or the Muslims or the Hindus or the Jews or the pagans or whoever, okay, members of any religious system, the permission to found universities based on, basically you have to be part of this ethical system to be part of this university, then, by definition, we need to give that to the atheists. Okay? We need to give that as a civil right to the atheists. We need to give that as a civil right to, for example, the gay activists, if they all want to gather together into a university, and okay, See, this is the power of this is the power of symbolism. Okay, this is the power of symbolism. Basically, for any given symbol set, you eventually run into a situation where the gaps exist. Whether or not you believe God can fill them, the gaps exist. And everything that mankind perceives to be evil comes from our understanding of what is in the gap. Okay? So you can't just sit here and say, well, God is evil because God is a critter of the gaps. You can't do that. Okay? Philosophical atheists violate Clarke's law all the time. Okay? Because it is equally applicable to them as a scientific law that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, there's a magic of ignorance. That's what I call dark sorcery, is for any symbolic structure, the point at which you can no longer manipulate that symbolic structure with your individual mind is the point where it becomes wizardry. Okay? Is the point where it becomes magic. So it's like, it gets to the point where before you can even earn the right to ask how I do something, you have to be able to accept me as an expert. You have to be able to accept me as a magician. Okay? The question is, am I doing white magic? Okay, Gandalf was a white wizard. Not even going to get into the question of white witch. Okay, but Gandalf was a white wizard. I reserve the right to call him a Christian symbol because he was written by a Roman Catholic. Okay, Gandalf was a white wizard. And what David Wood did brilliantly in one of his most recent campaigns, it's right there on his front door. It's right there on his front door. Is he talks about the ring, about being part of the Empower Network, and he basically says, I want people to go after this with a Gollum-like intensity. Okay? Well, see, I've already done him one better, because even if I don't assume that I'm, quote, the individual who gave him the power to use that symbol, all right, the thing that I find myself wrestling with at this individual versus mass dynamics level is that the problem with power is that power corrupts. Okay? If you want to go back into the symbology of the Blessed St. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, okay, I spent a lot of time on the Blessed St. Jack, but John Ronald Reuel Tolkien wrote, once you study it out, okay, Gandalf is not strictly a human being. Okay? Gandalf is part of an order of angels. That's why he was authorized to combat, say, the demon in Moria. Okay? And basically what happened in that combat? Well, he died. He died out of his physical body, and he was sent back. Okay? he had to finish he had to finish the rest of the freaking war before they would even let him back into heaven. Okay. But my opening point was that a Roman Catholic wrote him not as a man but as an angel. Okay, that was his particular compromise with, well, I don't want to be teaching black magic. Okay, because there are forms of magic all over the Bible. There are forms of magic that are biblically forbidden, and the question is why. Okay, won't get into that. That's an esoteric theological point again. But the problem with setting up people to go after the One Ring with this Gollum-like intensity, okay, is that the One Ring starts out as, well, it's an artifact of altogether evil. It will corrupt. Power will eventually corrupt anybody who wears the ring. Okay, and the miracle is that when the ring is actually being handled by the little guy, okay, by Frodo Baggins, by this tiny little guy without any power, okay, who has this team of the Fellowship of the Ring around him, okay, gathered from all over the world, hint, hint, hint. But anyway, team. He's functioning in the middle of a team in order to get the quest completed. Okay. And the thing that ultimately allows him to destroy the ring, okay, is effectively when God intervenes and the last servant of the ring literally bites Frodo's finger off and dies, destroying the damn thing. Okay, and that has implications for what I believe about. I need to be very careful in how I define wizardry. Okay, because my original thing was, well, let's give technical wizardry to the masses. Okay, and whether he knows it or not, David Wood is teaching me why that just cannot be so. Okay. Right. I may have said too much for the moment, but Veritasia lives. I'm going to go back into my little white tower and keep doing my tinkering until I get to something else. All right. Love you.